closing keynote speeches, you always have the problem. You get kind of the crowd excited very quickly on your end. So I'm very glad I flew into London today and I was able to take a picture from my neighbor on a very interesting headline. Actually, the best headline I've seen this year, and I'm going to be using it on all my big data speeches from now on. So you guys, you came. I mean, the bad news is essentially written on the headline here. Okay. The good news is, though, that the rationale behind that headline was very poorly articulated. And I understood that now, talking about big data for a while, working on it for quite a while, dealing with a lot of industries, running my own company using big data insights, that we have a calibration problem here. We have a fundamental problem on what we understand is big data. For you guys, it's, the 3 V's, or the 5 V's, or 7 V's, or however many V's you've come up now in the year 2014. For us academics, it's a very different story. Big data for us was always data which was beyond our capabilities. If we were able to deal with a megabyte of data, big data was a terabyte of data. If we were able to process data, a big chunk of data in 10 milliseconds, so 1 nanosecond was a big challenge. Even the first bit we generated was a big data challenge for us because it was beyond our capabilities 50 years to do that. So for us, big data is not an algorithm, it's not a product, it's a journey. It has always been a journey. We'll always be academics on this journey trying to break this frontier of big data developments. And actually the data you deal with, you as a company, is also going through a journey. Imagine the life of a single bit, right? You procure the bit, you feed that bit into a platform, you do something with it, and then in the end you act on the insights, ideally, of that single bit, or a multitude of bits thereof. So what I want to do is, instead of repeating all the, let's say, more commercial insights you have been exchanging over the past day, today, and the past days, I presume, I want to actually share some insights on what we work on currently in the academic community, what we think are the big challenges along that journey of those bits. And we start essentially with the procurement, when you generate data. It turns out there are loads of challenges there, and you guys, you procure a lot of data from very different sources. But the sources you get the data from today are mainly the 2 internets we have been designing in the past. It's the fixed internet and the mobile internet. The fixed internet is the internet which is connecting computers, the general internet. The mobile internet, clearly you start to generate a lot of data which is coming from the mobile edges with very interesting insights you can essentially work on. There's another internet coming which will totally disrupt the other 2 internets and will be an add-on to form this Uber internet. It's this internet of things. So we will be connecting things, sensors, actuators. There will be loads of them. People predict trillions of devices. So suddenly you get data not only from the billions of computers, billions of mobile phones, but trillions of devices. Now, the problem here is not actually the size, literally. It's not the speed. I'm sure you can all handle that. What worries us in the academic community is that you will get data with very, very different characteristics. You will get data with very different costs. So whereas data which you get from the internet or from within your companies, from computers, is generally free, the data you get from the mobile edges might be free. Some of those will have been exposed to the business model where you have to pay for that. The Internet of Things will be very, very dispersed. So there will be some streams which are free, other streams you have to pay. So we have a total mess of data coming into your platforms with very, very different characteristics and costs. So the question we ask is, hey, for one performance insight, for one big data insight you fix as a KPI, could we trade sources? Could we figure out, hey, instead of using this really expensive data stream here, I'm going to use a less expensive one, maybe of lower quality. I need more of that. When is the point that I compensate, essentially, for this lousy data to reach to the same big data insight precision as if you had the expensive data? I'll give you an example. So my company runs smart city stuff. So we're rolling out sensors all over the world. We are very strong in traffic. And we have essentially a smart parking solution where you put a sensor in every single parking bay in the city. and it generates data with a very high precision. It's very robust, works 24/7, whether it rains, it snows, or any other weather conditions, but it's very expensive to the city. Each sensor is a certain cost. On the other hand, we know the crowd is walking around. Google fired out this crowdsourced parking project hotspot, where people could say, hey, I'm parking, there's a parking space, etc. Now, hotspot itself failed because the crowdsourced data was not good enough to sustain the business models, but the good question is, hey, could I use part of that crowdsourced data to complement essentially my infrastructure-based data, take out some sensors, make it cheaper, but remain the same type of big data quality inside? And we're working on that. It turns out it's not an easy problem to crack, and will emerge more and more as time will come on with a very heterogeneous data sets. Another thing which we are really worried about is a very large quantity of data. How can we actually generate that, right? So how can you get these volumes, this heterogeneity, et cetera, which you need for your engines, for this big data field really to make sense? And clearly open data seems a solution. So everybody is fired up in the United Kingdom now on open data. The only problem is that we have maybe not a real framework here to exploit that commercially. And I see that with my own company. So we use a lot of different data streams. We use our own data streams. We pay for that. By installing them. We're using other people's data streams. We also pay for that. It's fine. We're using data streams which are free, and the license says we can do that. But then there are data streams which are free. They're open, but I can't make any money out of that. So you want to mesh up literally data streams of very different servicing and license agreements. Nobody really knows how to deal with that in an automated sense. You can always go there and negotiate manually, et cetera. But if you want to power this Internet of Things with all the big data story, you want to automate that. Literally, you want to automate that. So what we're working on is these agent frameworks, service level agreement frameworks, which will allow essentially both ends of the machines, wherever the data comes from, where the data goes to negotiate automatically its contracts, its licensing agreements, et cetera. And it turns out that the frameworks we have in place are not suited for that. So we need to extend that, and we're currently working on that as a community. The other big problem is that open data is not materializing because nobody's willing to open up the data. So look at your own company. How many of your companies, if you have so much data, so do you open that data? The answer is often no. So we don't open our data. We generate terabits of data per day on our smart city rollouts. We don't open it because we don't understand the value of the data. We have literally no understanding on the value chain of how data essentially increases in cost and value over the opportunities. So we're working, and personally me, I'm working quite a lot on that. So imagine you have the axis of value and cost versus time or opportunity, mashup opportunity, whatever you call that. So you start getting some data, either your own data or for somebody else. It has a certain cost, okay? Either it's an internal cost to generate it, or you actually ping it to some company, get the data. Now the value of the data is at least the cost of the data. You start to mash that up with other data sources. You start essentially to bring different data streams together. So you start to process that. It has a cost again. So the value of the data is at least the cost of the data. But there's one point where the cost curve to procure and process the data will be inferior in growth to the value curve, right? So that's a really sweet spot. You want to know, where's that spot? Where does cost and value decouple? Nobody knows. We have no idea. We're not even able to reverse engineer that. We have no idea how the actual curve will grow. So how quickly will my data become really valuable? So that is the stuff we work on, and the tools I'm using are tools we've been using for the last 200 years, and they actually came out of King's College London by a chap called Maxwell. So when waves propagate, they're actually based on 4 equations which solve the whole game. And we observe that as data goes from opportunity to opportunity, from mashup to mashup, the properties are very similar to electromagnetic waves propagating. So we thought if we could actually match the big data value propagation in the opportunity space to my Maxwell equations, which hundreds of thousands of physicists have built a very solid framework on, we could reuse that knowledge and essentially figure out very quickly what is the growth rate, where are the decoupling points, and a lot of other things such as policies on how to deal with open data, how to make it easy or difficult for data to propagate. So suddenly we are able to actually leverage on the brain power of something we have developed over the past centuries. So that's something in cooking, and it's a very exciting piece of work, really. That's understanding of the value chain of big data, because nobody knows the single bit of data which goes into your platform, what's the pound or dollar value of that, right? So that's what we're trying to answer. Now, the other issue is once the data is gone from procurement into your platform, that's a space you guys understand really well, so I'm not going to dwell on this too much. But you know, generally speaking, we developed very advanced statistical tools. You're using them today. So you're trying to answer, you have a big data set, you're trying to answer the known knowns, essentially. You know where to look, you know what to look for, just want to figure out really what it is about. Latest tools are machine learning tools. Machine learning tools are essentially tools which allow you to address the unknown knowns, in a sense. You know where to look, but you don't know what to look for, right? Or the other way around, depending on how you actually pitch that. The quick question is that the end of the game? And we believe it's not. So we are now in a position with all our developments in artificial intelligence to take a much more holistic view on the data processing and actually look at the data set and say, hey, can we actually find something here which is totally unknown? So it's addressing the problem of finding the unknown in the data set. You need a lot of intuition for that. You need a kind of an uber-conscious you're building here. And that, we believe, artificial intelligence, as of 2014, is ready to do that, even though we haven't really fully understood how this will play out. Okay? And that will really neatly fit into this whole problem of the chain of the data, okay? Of the raw data versus the information versus knowledge versus wisdom. So we're now on the wisdom side. We really want to elaborate on the wisdom side. That's really what we want to do. I'm sure you know this example where, you know, just to exemplify this whole chain, you know, if you get a picture which you see something red on there, that's raw data. If you figure out that's a tomato, that's essentially information. If you figure out that that's actually, you know, a fruit, that's knowledge. And the fact that you don't put it in a fruit salad, that's wisdom. Okay, even though there are cultures who put it into fruit salads. But that's really where we are, okay? So we have a lot of tools for the very beginning. We know how to deal with raw data. We have a lot of tools for information. So just look at Shannon. We really know how to treat information forth and back, up and down. We start to develop tools for knowledge. So we have knowledge databases. We can build knowledge trees. We can prioritize. That's all your turf. But we have no tools available today for wisdom. And you figure out very quickly, so we thought a lot about this, and you figure very quickly that wisdom actually is the knowledgeable application or the intelligent application of your knowledge, depending on the circumstance. So you put something in a salad, or you do not put it in a salad. So what we've figured out is that big data is just the very beginning of the journey where we want to be. It's not the end. For many people, it's the end. It's collecting data, processing data, putting the data on a PowerPoint for the CEO or CFO or CTO, and that's it, right? The really interesting thing, though, is to close the data cycle. Go beyond that. Do something with the data. Act on the data, okay? So that's what we work on. We're working on the closing of the data cycle. On the actuation, there needs to be some form of robotics, an actuator, or a lamp or light on an LED display, something which happens in real time, kind of feeds back essentially this cycle. And it's a very exciting development we're doing right now because we're designing with that the next generation internet. The three internets we have, the fixed internet, the mobile internet, the Internet of Things, they're all information delivery networks. They're all feeding data into your engines to build this big data picture. But we are building something which can actually act on the data. We're building the tactile internet. So we're having a paradigm shift from an information delivery network literally to a skill set delivery network. Suddenly you are, either yourself or your big data insights are able to act on that. Imagine the Ebola crisis. Imagine we had a self-assembling hospital down there and you could do remote surgery. Imagine you could do remote servicing. Imagine you could teach kids in the Gaza how to paint, how to play the piano, etc. That's the type of skill sets we'll be seeing developing over the next years to come, and we're able to transmit them digitally over that tactile internet. With that, I'm closing, and I want you to take away really one thing, that big data is really just half of the story. Big action, we believe, is the paradigm of the 21st century. Thank you very much.